Ladies and gentlemen, we are live! Who the fuck is that guy?
I love you! My balls are hot.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday. It's Friday. Welcome back to Across the Cage, episode 41 of Across the Cage. My name is Stefan, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me in this lovely Friday evening, 6:26 p.m. What's the day today? We're almost at what is it? The 30th of August. This year's just flown by. The first thing that I wanted to say is thank you so much for all the feedback and the response that I had from the episode on Tuesday. It's very humbling to see, obviously, that people have embraced, I guess, the change in format of the podcast, and it's good, man. Feels good, man. .jpg feels good. Feels real good. Second thing I wanted to note is that I don't just only have grey jumpers. See, I've got a blue jumper on today. Still no pants on, but I've got a blue jumper on today, which is good. I don't just have grey. I've noticed that all the thumbnails on YouTube just have me in a grey jumper. It's like I don't change, which, you know what, I wouldn't mind not changing, especially with the weather change here in Sydney. But it is what it is, as old mate Max Holloway would say. Some stuff to cover today. Then we've got the fight night UFC Shenzhen happening. I believe it's tomorrow. But extremely excited for that. But first things first, we'll roll into some news. Beautiful. All right. The the first point of news. I think this went viral enough when it came out on Wednesday, I guess Thursday morning. It was in regards to the gentleman right here, Mr. BJ Penn. Yet again, he's involved in another brawl, another fight. It was. What more is there to say? You know, the guy. Seriously, in all seriousness, before I sort of say anything else about the situation, it's obvious that the guy needs some help and some support, and whether that's comes down to the support group that he has around him, his friends and family, you know, even the UFC, Dana White, they need to reach out to him, because obviously there's a massive issue here where he seems to be getting himself into some trouble. Now he's been completely knocked out here. He's got a fight coming up against Nick Lentz, and this is not what you want to see. But long story short, there were two incidents at the same time at a nightclub, or outside of a nightclub in Hawaii. The first incident was, I guess, him tussling with with Andy Ruiz Jr. and it was asking to be punched and hit in the face, and you know, Andy Ruiz threw that powerful overhand. I guess it was 1-2. It was a powerful 1-2, and BJ Penn went shut the lights off completely and was flatlined. But a little bit later on, he gets up and there's a video of him ground and pounding Andy Ruiz. So man, look, BJ Penn fights at all weight classes. BJ Penn's some would say he's 2-0 in bar fights. But yeah, look, it's not a good look for him. It's not something that you want to see, especially since the guy hasn't won a fight since 2010. He's a legend of the sport. He's done so much for MMA, not just in the UFC, but just for MMA in general. You know, I know a lot of the fighters coming out of Hawaii are extremely influenced by BJ Penn, so he's done a lot for them, and a lot of people look up to him. So the last thing that you want to see is BJ just fall completely into this downward slope. Already, it's like a snowball effect, and he's already sort of on a very, very large downward spiral. So look, I hope that the community that he's around rallies in for him and gets him to seek help, because we want to see him healthy. I don't think we necessarily want to see him fight anymore, but we want to see him healthy. We want to see him, you know, going out and being a good role model for the next generation of MMA fighters, and for the generations and generations to come. So I'll leave BJ Penn at that. He can stay right here, being happy. So next bit of news, and I was a little bit thrown back at when I saw this. Anthony Rumble Johnson planning to return to the UFC in 2020 next year, and I believe he said, I guess his manager's come out, Ali Abdelaziz has come out and said that he'll be returning to the UFC. He's put himself back into the USADA testing pool. I'm sure Jeff Nowitzki will be fishing around him because he's a big boy. He's a big boy. He could be all of 280 pounds, 290 pounds, 300 pounds. He's huge, absolutely huge. But it's good to see. Well, so he's come out and he said, yes, it's true that I'll come back to MMA heavyweight, but only if Jones fights for the title. So I'm assuming, sorry, I butchered that. So if Jones fights Cormier for the title, obviously Cormier's not the champion anymore, so Jones would have to fight Stipe, and I guess the winner of that, I'm assuming he wants John Jones to win that heavyweight title and come back and beat John Jones, because it's a personal goal of mine to fight the very best of the best, and I truly before I truly stopped fighting. John was always my motivation. Once I went to light heavyweight would just be insane, but three of us were at it again. Whew. Jesus Christ. Look, if Rumble Johnson can make it down to the 260 limit, and he can still keep that same pace that he kept at light heavyweight, man, nightmare. The only person that was able to, I guess, weather the storm of him at light heavyweight was DC, and DC obviously went on to do amazing things after that. But heavyweights, look out. Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Rumble Johnson. Fuck, Jesus Christ, that's too much to handle. It's way too much to. Oh yeah, Anthony Rumble Johnson, tune-up fight. Here you go. He's Ngannou. Fuck that, bro. Fuck that. All right. This is what I found this really interesting as well. So after UFC 241, there were a number of fighters that were actually recommended to move up in weight classes, or they need to get some clearances from the California State Athletic Commission. So here we go. California State Athletic Commission, Andy Foster, that the top middleweight contender is that's Paulo Costa, is one of the 6 fighters that recently competed at UFC 241 in Anaheim, who is being advised to move up a weight class by the commission. So I believe this is due to the rehydration after weigh-ins. So where is the actual figures? 15 list of fighters, 15% or more. Officially, Costa was up 14.9% up heavier. So he's heavier 14.9% the day after weigh-ins. For perspective, Costa weighed in at 186 pounds on Friday and rehydrated to 213 pounds on Saturday. Then you had Bermudez from 140 to 164. Who competed at a 140 catchweight bout, and Sadiq Youssef 145 to 169. Just imagine, he's already juiced and jacked as it is, and him going in there, it's supposed to be at 185, goes in there at 213 pounds. That is insane. It just shows where the guy can fight. Imagine him at light heavyweight. He'd be an explosive and quick light heavyweight as well. Imagine him versus John Jones as well. Far out, these fights, man. These fights give me goosebumps. But again, it says here it's a recommendation, not an obligation. So at the end of the day, they can do what they can do until the Athletic Commission kind of steps in. Very similar to what they did to Aspen Ladd and say, you know what, we're not going to give you a license at this weight. We're only going to give you a license at this weight. So I think Paulo Costa, as long as he can make the weight, I don't think there should be any issues. At the end of the day, you both of you are the exact same weight when you weigh in at the same time. How your body rehydrates is, I guess, up to your own individual body. So yeah. A fight announcement. Carlos Condit's back. Interesting fight. UFC on ESPN 7. I believe that's happening in December. Carlos Condit against Mickey Gall. Very, very interesting fight. Mickey Gall's chasing those old school names. Chasing those old school after CM Punk, just chasing old school names. But it'd be a good contest, because I always appreciated Carlos Condit. He has had a bit of a hard run, but I've always appreciated Carlos Condit. You know, former interim welterweight champion. Obviously couldn't get it done against Robbie Lawler, but he's always been a decent fighter. Some said, you know, he should probably end his career in the next couple of years or whatnot. But again, this is, like I said on Tuesday, no one is within their right, unless you're BJ Penn. No one is within your right to turn around and tell, or BJ Penn or Tito Ortiz or Chuck Liddell. No one's within your right. No one's within their rights to turn around and tell another fighter what their body can and can't do. Carlos Condit obviously sees himself to still be a world champion. He was a world champion. He still sees himself, you know, good enough to be at that level. By all means, go and do it. He's still pretty healthy. You know, he hasn't had too bad of a knockouts. He has had some knockout losses, but not too bad. So, good opportunity for Mickey Gall as well against tough competition. Right. Now this was interesting as well. The first call out for I guess the ghost of the lightweight division, Mr. Gregor Gillespie, calling out Anthony Pettis, calling him out to fight at UFC 244, the gift. I am very nervous for the rest of that 155 pound division. Because that number 11 ranking for Mr. Gillespie is not something to take lightly. I believe he's won 6 of his fights in the octagon, and he's undefeated. So he's obviously gone 6-0, 6-0 in the UFC, and he's undefeated. So I wonder if we can. Here we go. So he's put up a post on Instagram. For the last 6 fights, everyone has been pressuring and annoying me to call someone out. I never wanted to do it. It looks like I'm going to have to play the game. I want my first call out to count. So Showtime Pettis, I think you're a great fighter, but you're in the wrong weight class. Come back down to 155 and meet me at MSG on November 2. And it's funny because he's got a box of Wheaties, and Serena Williams is on the front. So it would have been good if you had the box of Wheaties with Mr. Anthony Pettis on the front. But again, very interesting matchup. I'm really excited to see that if that was to eventuate. Really, really excited to see that. Gregor Gillespie is one to watch for, and I do believe at some stage of his career he will be the lightweight and could possibly be the welterweight UFC champion of the world. Watch out for him. Watch out. In terms of news, I don't think there was anything else interesting that happened over the week. I know there was stuff going around in regards to Paige Van Zandt. She went on to Ariel's show and was saying that she doesn't really need to fight in the UFC. She gets paid decent royalties from uploading photos and whatnot onto Instagram. But you know, at the end of the day, she's a decent enough fighter to be fighting in the UFC. And obviously, it's just a perfect example of the opportunities that you can have when you, I guess, look a certain way and appeal to a certain market. And I guess the opportunities are endless for anybody there in the UFC. I mean, unless you're Andrei Arlovski with a nose like that, it might be a bit hard. But yeah, besides that, there was a relatively slow news week this week. I think we covered everything on Tuesday in regards to the McGregor stuff. But yes, we shall plow on. There's the fights happening over the weekend. We've got UFC Fight Night Shenzhen. And there's also some boxing that's happening as well. So Vasily Lomachenko versus Luke Campbell is happening over the weekend for 772 belts. It always amazes me how many belts the boxing community has. I think because there's so many different organizations and they all want to have a belt. Let's have one belt. You just all come together. You're just the WBO, the World Boxing, WBA, sorry, the World Boxing Association. And it's just one belt system. You can have the multiple weight classes, but just have one belt system, and that's it. I think they saturate the market full of different belts and whatever, and it gets all confusing I guess, mask. Even now, you've got 3 different heavyweight champions of the world. It just doesn't make any sense at all. You've got Deontay Wilder, you've got Tyson Fury, and then you've got Andy Ruiz Jr. Just have one. Why have 3 heavyweight champions when you can just have one? It doesn't make sense for me. But anyway, he's taking on. So you got Luke Campbell taking on Lomachenko, and I believe this is at 135 pounds. And in boxing terms, it's lightweight. So Vasily Lomachenko is a huge favorite as well. Huge favorite. I would assume he was going to get the job done. He's the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world. He's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist and a 3-division champ. So when you talk about greatest of all time, again, number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world, I think Vasily Lomachenko gets it done. I reckon it gets it under 6 rounds. I think under 6 rounds he gets this one done. And then you got the UFC Fight Night Shenzhen. It's happening out of China. This is tomorrow for Australia. It's tomorrow night, which is very exciting. You get to have a fight card at night, which is good. It's not. They don't start usually if they happen on a Sunday in the US. They start at around the early prelims will start at around 7 a.m., 8 a.m. and they'll go from there up until 3 in the afternoon. That's in Australia. But this fight card's tomorrow. It's happening tomorrow at 8 p.m. You've got Jessica Andrade defending her strawweight belt that she won against Rose Namajunas with that slam to the back of the head against Weili Zhang from China. There's been a lot of talk, and I think I'll just touch on this a little bit before I guess run down the card. But I think there's been a lot of talk of the rise of Weili Zhang and whether the rise to the belt is probably a little bit too quick. And to be completely honest with you, I don't. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. She's 19-1. She hasn't lost a fight since her first ever mixed martial arts fight. And I think it's deserving. I think it's very much so deserving. In the UFC, I believe so. She beat Tisha Torres in her last fight, and then she beat Aguilar in November 2018, and then she beat Taylor in a couple months earlier in 2018. So she's only had a short amount of time in the UFC. But that's not to say that, that's like Ben Askren, for example. Ben Askren spent all of his career outside of the UFC. But that didn't warrant him to not get a big opportunity or a big name first when he came in, And in that strawweight division, I do think it's warranted, especially in going into China and going into that market. I think it's a really, really good opportunity for her. It's obviously a market that the UFC want to tap into. They've just got that the UFC training facility that's just been launched and built, which is amazing. I would absolutely love to train in any of their centers. I train out of the UFC gym in Parramatta, and I mean that's nothing. That's absolutely nothing compared to these performance centers and whatnot. So can't even compare the two. But I would absolutely love to spend some time there training. But getting off track there. Weili Zhang, she's a really, I guess, if she captures the belt on the weekend, she has the potential to be one of the biggest stars, not just in Chinese mixed martial arts, just in mixed martial arts in general. The market in China is absolutely huge, and if she becomes a world champion, she'll bring in, if they have a pay-per-view that involves her at the top of the card, the pay-per-view buys coming out of China will be stupid. Now the question remains: is MMA that popular in China? When you're producing fighters like this, and the UFC wouldn't invest so much money into building a multi-million-dollar facility out there if it wasn't popular. Do you know what I mean? So, and the whole idea is to have that facility there so that they can, I guess, from the ground up, have somewhere where you can get a fighter that's coming in that's, that the basics are all good, and train them up to be, stars like this, main eventers and top-ranked fighters. So I think it's a big opportunity for her. She obviously has a tough task against Jessica Andrade. Now, these two ladies are extremely ripped. They're extremely ripped and strong. So I'll be interested to see how Jessica Andrade, how Weili Zhang does with the strength of Andrade. Obviously, we saw in the last fight against Rose, Andrade multiple times throwing Rose Namajunas over her head. I think she'll have a tougher time doing this. I think Weili Zhang does really, really good job of stuffing the takedowns. I believe she has... there we go, 100% takedown defense. So she does a really, really good job of stuffing those takedowns, and I think she'll play a little bit smarter. I think this one goes to a decision. I do think that it's hard. It all depends on the heavy hands of Andrade. If we haven't really seen Weili Zhang have her chin tested, so if Andrade does connect, she's extremely strong. So I'll be interested to see how she does. In terms of viewership of this card, I think you'll get some local Chinese trying to tap into that local Chinese market. So hopefully this does draw some sort of attention to the card. But I think everywhere else, I don't think many people are that interested in it. Besides the degenerates like myself. But in terms of other fighters on the card, to make it a little bit more interesting, you got Li Jingliang in the co-main event taking on Elizu Dos Santos, and you've got Kai Kara-France taking on Mark De La Rosa. I'll be tuning into this card from the ground up, only because not really only because I love mixed martial arts, but these are the types of cards, and I've said this multiple times here on the podcast, that you see the up and coming fighters, I guess, show their craft. You come into these stages like this, and you can make a name of yourself from these types of events. Yes, okay, fair enough. You may not get the same viewership as everywhere else, but if you have, let's call it a viral moment, these are absolutely critical for your career. And also too, I find that these cards are really exciting. I find that because they're not on the big stage of a pay-per-view, I find that fighters don't necessarily get that nervous. I mean, again, it's hard to say that, because before an event, before anything that you do that involves, I guess a contest, you have to have some sort of nerves. But I find that on a pay-per-view, there's more money involved, there's more viewers involved, there's more media coverage involved as well. So it's very hard to get away from that. Whereas these cards, the fighters tend to be a little bit more relaxed, and it's an opportunity for them to hone their craft and I guess show their craft and put on a good show. So the top three fights, I predict Kara-France winning via TKO. I've got Jing Liang winning this one via decision. And in the main event, you know what? This is probably controversial, but I reckon that Weili Zhang is going to win this one. I think she's going to win this via decision. I think she edges out a decision against Jessica Andrade. That's if Weili doesn't catch them hands of Andrade. Because I think if Andrade lands early, if she comes out firing and lands early, I think Weili may be in a bit of trouble. But if this all goes to a decision, I think Weili Zhang gets it done. I think she gets it done. And besides that, you know what? I think we're done here. I think we're done. I've got nothing else to say. I got nothing else to say. Enjoy the fights. Enjoy this weekend's fights. Enjoy the boxing. We'll be back on Tuesday, or I'll be back on Tuesday to run over, I guess, the card from the weekend, the boxing, and whatever news that comes out of the weekend. But besides that, that's it. This is episode 41 in the books, done. A big shout out to CB Deals Australia for supporting the podcast. Biggest shout out to the loyal fans that have reached out and shown their given me the feedback and showing the love for the podcast. I appreciate it. Thanks to all the guys out on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you support us. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It humbles the heart and soul. It makes a grown 26-year-old man feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. From myself, I've been Stefan. You've been the listeners. Thank you so much. Enjoy the fights. Take care. Ciao.